Hey there, and welcome. Tonight we're beginning a new slow and gentle journey into the past, and this time we're stepping quietly into the world of the Japanese samurai household, a place where silence spoke louder than words, where every gesture had meaning, and where life flowed gently like a stream beneath the pine trees. But before we get fully settled, if you enjoy calm, cozy storytelling like this, feel free to like the video and subscribe, and in the comments, tell me where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you right now. It's always amazing to see who's winding down with us from across the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan or a white noise machine for that gentle background hum. Let the tension melt from your shoulders. This isn't a history lecture. It's more like a whisper through time, slow, soft and simple. Somewhere in the distance you might imagine the faint toll of a bronze bell, the rustling of silk sleeves, and the steady warmth of a fire that never burns too brightly. So let's take a slow breath and gently wander into the candlelit halls of a samurai's home. Though most days in the samurai household flowed like calm water, there were seasons touched by distant thunder, times when the drums of war echoed from the hills, or when slender-footed messengers arrived with tightly sealed scrolls, marked with the crests of their lords and the quiet urgency of steel. When conflict stirred beyond the borders, life within the home shifted, subtly but surely. The samurai's armour, normally stored in a lacquered chest lined with silk, was taken out and examined. Each piece, the do, chest armour, sode, shoulder guards, koti, armoured sleeves, and kabuto, helmet, was polished and checked for wear. His wife assisted him without a word. Together, in the tatami room washed in golden light, they laid out each layer. Their movements were careful, graceful, the quiet art of readiness. The children watched from the hallway, sensing what the adults never said aloud. Lessons grew shorter. The prayers offered before the kamidana, the household shrine, grew longer. The air around each meal was deeper, more thoughtful. Chopsticks moved slower, and eyes searched faces as if to remember them a little better. The samurai meanwhile sat in stillness by the small altar after readying his armour. He examined his daisho, the long katana and the shorter wakizashi, before wrapping them gently in cloth. There was no bravado in these moments, no rehearsed speeches, only reflection. He often wrote a short note, sealed it in rice paper, and tucked it beneath a wooden carving at the shrine, a private whisper to the spirits, unread by anyone, but heavy with meaning. The evening before departure was not one of sorrow, but of memory. He might share a haiku, a childhood tale, or a proverb passed down by his father. Words that carried the weight of generations without ever needing to mention war. On the morning of his departure, the household rose before the sun. His wife prepared a simple yet sacred meal, steamed barley rice, miso soup with wild greens, and salted grilled fish. A sprig of shiso leaf was added to the tray for purity and renewal. The children bowed deeply, holding back tears, and placed folded charms in his hand. Small origami cranes, a scrap of poetry, a pressed maple leaf. Dressed in full armour, the samurai knelt before the kamidana, pressing his forehead to the tatami mat in reverence. When it was time to leave, he said little. A soft nod to his wife, a touch on the shoulder of each child. Then, silently, he stepped out into the grey-blue light of dawn, walking down the stone path as mist clung gently to the garden moss. War did not roar every moment. It pulsed, through clashing steel, yes, but also through long silences between skirmishes, through nights spent beneath unfamiliar stars, and through the quiet bonds formed between warriors under shared banners. During campaigns, the samurai's life was pared down to necessity. Routines turned austere. Meditation before dawn remained, done now beside cold streams, or beneath leaning pine trees in mountain passes. Each breath was still a prayer for clarity, each movement intentional. Armour was worn not for intimidation but identity, to belong to a clan, a cause, a code. Meals were Spartan, dried rice, salted plum, roasted chestnuts, or pickled daikon stored in wax paper. They were eaten crouched beside campfires, with wind threading through the trees. Sometimes there was no food for a day or more. Hunger became another companion, accepted without complaint. In battle, the samurai fought with precision. Their swords did not flail but cut with practiced economy. Their movements followed rhythm, not rage. They did not shout before charging. Silence was their war cry. They were not reckless. They were resolute. And yet in all the discipline they remained human. When a friend fell, a samurai paused to kneel beside him. Whispered words, closed eyes, cleansed blood with a strip of cloth if time allowed. If an enemy surrendered, he was spared. Bound, not butchered. Bushido did not vanish amid violence. It was upheld precisely in its midst. At night the camp quieted. Some men sharpened blades. Others polished their kabuto by candlelight, their reflections distorted in the metal. The older ones told tales of spirits in forests, foxes who turned into women, and battles where fate turned on a single footstep. The samurai sometimes wrote letters, short and spare. The moon tonight was thin like a reed. I thought of our garden. I remain in service. These were sent with travelling monks or passing messengers, folded into the sleeves of their robes. Back home, the household pulsed with its own kind of quiet strength. The wife stepped into her husband's roles without hesitation, balancing ledgers, overseeing the storehouse, walking the rice paddies with field workers. At night, by the lantern's gentle glow, she wrote deliberate letters to her husband. Not full of longing, but of life. How the pine tree had bent in the storm. How the children had begun writing haiku on their own. How the old cat had given birth near the hearth. The children, too, added their voices to this distant conversation. Folded poems, drawings in charcoal, a petal saved from the first cherry blossom. Evenings became rituals of waiting, folding his outer robe, lighting incense by his empty seat, speaking his name softly before bed, just once. When, if, he returned, weeks or seasons later, it was never with fanfare. Sometimes he came home limping. Sometimes he bore a new scar. Sometimes he said very little at all. There were silences that lingered like morning fog and the weight of things left unsaid. But always his place was waiting. His teacup warmed, his sandals cleaned and placed by the threshold. One child would sit beside him, placing a fresh drawing in his lap. Another would bring the old wooden carving from the shrine, pressing it gently into his hand. He did not need to explain. They did not need to ask. The household did not demand his strength. It simply welcomed his return, like rain to dry soil, slowly, gently, wholly. War never defined the samurai's household. It tested it. And through that test, its true character emerged, composed, steady, and deeply rooted in honour, not through words, but through ritual, patience, and love. Just before the sun crests the horizon, the first light seeps through the shoji screens, painting long shadows across the tatami mats. The air is cool and damp with dew. Somewhere outside, a bamboo fountain tips gently with a knock, then resets, again and again, like a slow heartbeat. Inside, the samurai wakes. He doesn't stretch or groan. He simply sits up, breathes deeply, and folds his futon with quiet precision. The bedding is stored away in a chest. The room returns to emptiness, as if no one had slept there at all. He kneels before a small kamidana, the wooden household shrine tucked into a high corner. A soft bow, a short prayer. The incense is lit. The scent is earthy and grounding, and the smoke curls slowly upward. Outside, the garden begins to stir as well. The dew on the stone path catches the early sunlight, glimmering like faint stars. A carp breaches the still surface of the pond with a quiet splash, sending ripples across a reflection of the sky. In the pine tree, a magpie calls once, then goes silent again. The morning seems to know it must whisper. Back inside, the samurai begins his slow routine of personal care. He pours cold water from a ceramic pitcher into a small wooden basin and carefully splashes his face. The shock is brief but bracing. He pats his face dry with a folded cloth, places it back with precise folds, and smooths the sleeves of his robe. The home is beginning to stir. Wooden beams creak softly as the morning chill gives way to warmth. A kettle clicks quietly over the brazier. Somewhere on the veranda, a broom whispers against the floor, sweeping away fallen leaves from the night wind. The scent of hinoki wood and fresh air blend together, a natural perfume of the house. The samurai takes out his writing tools, a shallow black inkstone, a bamboo brush, and a small stack of thick washi paper. With practiced care, he grinds the ink stick in soft circles, adding drops of water until the liquid turns deep and silky. Perhaps he writes a haiku, something seasonal, about the mist or the crow calling beyond the hedge. The brush dances slowly, the strokes breathing with silence. Outside, his wife tends to the garden in quiet reflection, brushing dust from the stone lanterns, adjusting the position of a bonsai tree, or checking the bamboo water channel for blockages. Her presence is like the breeze, always there, always moving, always gentle. From time to time, she may pluck a seasonal blossom, camellia in winter, iris in spring, and set it in a small vase by the kamidana. These touches are not for decoration, but for harmony. A flower, a brush stroke, a folded cloth, all threads in the tapestry of daily life. The children stir slowly, their soft footsteps still unsure from sleep. They slide open the shoji with both hands and bow as they enter the main hall. Their yawns are muffled. Their hair, messy but clean, falls across their eyes. They settle beside their father, watching quietly as he writes. He nods in greeting but says nothing. There will be time for words later. You can imagine the soft padding of bare feet on wood, the flutter of paper screens as the wind moves through the hall, the slight rustling of robes as someone kneels or stands. There is no urgency in this hour. The morning is a space of preparation, reverence, and quiet grounding. A time to anchor oneself before the world begins to stir. If the season is winter, you might hear the soft crackle of charcoal warming a small brazier in the corner. If it is summer, the buzz of cicadas outside fills the gaps between footfalls. Autumn brings the distant clang of chestnuts falling from branches, and spring carries with it the laughter of water, rain dripping gently from the roof tiles. In the background the sounds remain gentle, the faint bubbling of the kettle, the whisper of wind through the pine, and the shushing rhythm of broom on wood. After the slow, quiet rituals of the morning, the samurai household moves seamlessly into the rhythm of breakfast. Not a rushed affair, but a continuation of the same meditative calm. The house carries the warmth of the rising sun now, and a breeze flows gently through the corridors, shifting the Noran curtains hung at the doorways. In the kitchen, which is more of an open hearth surrounded by polished wood and hanging utensils, the samurai's wife works with deliberate elegance. Her movements are soundless and efficient, a practiced hand that knows exactly where everything belongs. She begins by preparing rice, rinsing it several times until the water runs crystal clear. Each swirl of her hands through the grains feels ceremonial, like a quiet conversation with the ingredients. A pot is placed over the coals, and soon a subtle hissing sound rises with the scent of steamed rice. Miso paste is stirred into a small pot of dashi broth, its aroma earthy and comforting. Thin slices of tofu float silently in the soup as it simmers, joined by wakame seaweed that curls and softens in the warmth. Depending on the season, the menu shifts ever so slightly. In spring, tender bamboo shoots might be simmered with soy and mirin, bringing a fresh and nutty flavour. In summer, cooling dishes like chilled tofu or pickled cucumber slices are served with a touch of grated ginger. Autumn brings roasted chestnuts or matsutake mushrooms, cooked in a delicate broth. And in winter, the bowls might hold odon, warm-simmered daikon, konjac and boiled eggs, seasoned in a fragrant soy-based broth. Small dishes of tsukemono, pickled vegetables, are presented in subtle colours: pale pink radish, pale green cucumber, deep purple eggplant. Each one not only adds flavour, but symbolises balance, sour with sweet, texture with softness. The children awaken gradually, stirred more by the familiar smells than any noise. Their footfalls are soft, and their greetings quiet and respectful. Each bows upon entering the kitchen, their eyes still drowsy but full of warmth. There is no shouting, no chaos, just the gentle rhythms of a home waking up together. The family gathers on the floor around a low table, legs tucked beneath them on soft zabuton cushions. Breakfast is served in lacquered bowls and porcelain dishes, steaming white rice, golden miso soup, pickled vegetables, and perhaps a small grilled fish or tamagoyaki, sweet rolled omelettes sliced neatly into delicate spirals. Occasionally a plum blossom might be added atop the rice, its crimson hue a subtle reminder of life's fleeting beauty. There is little conversation during breakfast, not from stiffness, but from mutual understanding. The quiet is a shared comfort. The children eat carefully, not rushing, not wasting. The samurai himself eats with calm precision, savouring each bite as though he were reading a page of poetry. A small pot of green tea is shared afterward, hot, grassy and soothing. The steam rises like incense curling into the sunlight. The family pauses for a moment, not speaking, simply absorbing the warmth and the harmony of their surroundings. Occasionally a bird outside offers a cheerful note, the light sound of sparrow wings brushing across the wooden veranda, or the dry trill of a cricket hidden beneath the porch. These natural intrusions are welcome, folded gently into the fabric of breakfast. After the meal, the dishes are cleared swiftly but gently. Leftovers are saved with care, not discarded. The children help clean up, placing used dishes into a large wooden basin for washing. Water is poured from a bamboo ladle, and each bowl is scrubbed by hand with soft fibres, then left to dry in the sun by the window. As they work, the mother might hum a soft tune. Not quite a lullaby, but a melody of simple comfort. The children echo her hums, their voices barely above a whisper. Then the family gathers briefly in the main room. The samurai prepares for his mid-morning routines, perhaps a short period of calligraphy or sword cleaning. The children, now refreshed, begin their lessons, reading aloud, reciting verses or tracing kanji characters on thin paper. The house, gently nourished and warmed, breathes in the silence again, like a living spirit returned to stillness. The sense of peace, of order and of purpose in even the most mundane activities is what defines the heart of this household. In the background, if you listen closely in your imagination, you might hear the coals settling in the hearth, or the faint clatter of a wooden spoon set down beside an empty bowl. Sounds as soft and meaningful as any lullaby. By late morning, the home eases into its gentle rhythm of chores and personal duties. The air by now is warm, but never uncomfortable. Sunlight filters through the open paper doors and dances gently across the woven mats. The samurai, now dressed in a light summer kimono called a yukata, wraps a wide sash around his waist, snug but not restrictive. In one hand he holds his bokken, the smooth wooden sword used for daily kata or practice forms. He steps out into the courtyard, where the gravel path has been freshly swept. Overhead, pine branches sway slowly in the breeze, and the quiet chirping of insects begins to blend with the steady breath of the morning. He stands still for a moment, centering himself. The courtyard is enclosed, quiet, and shielded from distraction, ideal for personal refinement. He bows once to an invisible opponent, feet shoulder-width apart, and slowly draws his bokken into the ready stance. His eyes do not dart. They settle, focused and calm. He begins the first kata, a series of flowing movements designed not only to refine technique, but to cultivate awareness, posture, and discipline. His movements are deliberate, not aggressive. He steps forward, sword raised overhead in a high guard, then cuts downward with a breath that feels as controlled as the blade itself. The form is called ippon mei mai, a basic kata for drawing and cutting in a single motion. He repeats it step by step, his body adjusting to the familiar pattern. He transitions smoothly to sayu men, a form emphasizing diagonal cuts from left and right, keeping his hips stable and breath slow. With each motion, the sound of the wooden sword slicing air becomes a part of the courtyard's music, not disruptive, but rhythmic. You can imagine the rhythm: footfall, inhale, swing, pause, reset, again. He switches to a more advanced kata, perhaps Sanbonmei Oshiro, which begins with a backward step and teaches awareness of attack from behind. These forms, though practiced alone, are not solitary. They are a dialogue with generations past, with instructors long gone, and with ideals that live in the silence. A few sweat droplets appear at his brow, though his breathing remains measured. The form he practices might be centuries old, passed down from teacher to pupil in the dojo halls of his youth. In this home setting, the forms are no less sacred. Each cut, each pivot, each stance is an offering of respect, to his past, to his ancestors, and to the peaceful balance he maintains. Meanwhile, nearby, his wife tends to household tasks with equal grace. She wipes down the bamboo railings, picks herbs from the garden, and folds freshly aired cloths. On this day, she prepares bundles of yuzu and lavender for scenting the wash basins, tying each with a strand of red thread. Her movements, like her husband's, are purposeful and precise. Inside, the children are engaged in their lessons, repeating poetry, practicing kanji with horsehair brushes dipped in diluted ink. Their instructor, seated with his legs folded, listens quietly and corrects them gently. The boy works on a passage from Manyoshu, carefully tracing the curves of ancient calligraphy. The girl recites aloud a seasonal poem, pausing at each line for breath. Every corner of the home has its own quiet energy. From the edge of the courtyard, a faint smell of sandalwood drifts from a small incense holder placed by the veranda. The whole household seems connected by an invisible thread of stillness, tied to a shared rhythm of dignity and intention. After finishing his final kata, the samurai switches tasks. He takes a seat on a wooden stool by the engawa and begins cleaning his blades. Though ceremonial, the act is meditative. A soft cloth, a bit of clove oil, and a focused mind. The steel of his wakizashi gleams faintly as he polishes along the curve. This is not about battle. It is about caretaking. Later, he joins his wife to check on the silkworm trays in the shaded corner of the house. The fine white worms inch quietly across mulberry leaves. He replaces dried ones while she adjusts the cloth coverings. It's a minor task, but one that maintains balance in the small economy of their life. Eventually, the samurai ends his practice with a deep bow, returning his bokken to his side. He walks back to the engawa and sits quietly for a few moments, wiping his brow with a cloth. He observes his family through the open door, their figures soft in the golden light. There is no need for words. This is harmony. As the sun rises higher, the household pauses. The warmth of early afternoon begins to settle across the tiled rooftops, casting long shadows that stretch like lazy cats across the veranda. The world outside grows quiet. Even the birds retreat into shaded branches, and the wind becomes a slower, gentler sigh through the bamboo. It is a time of stillness, when even thought itself seems to slow to a pleasant crawl. Inside, the children finish their lessons and are encouraged to rest. One curls up beside the open door with a cloth doll, her fingers lazily tracing its worn edges. Another lies flat on his back, watching the shadows of leaves shift like dancers across the wooden ceiling. The instructor, having completed the day's reading, bows softly and takes his leave. His sandals crunch lightly on the gravel as he exits through the garden gate. The samurai himself has changed from his training robe into a lighter one of soft linen, its pattern muted, tiny brush-painted waves across a sea of pale blue. He walks slowly along the engawa, the wooden corridor that stretches the length of the house and opens to the garden. His sandals make soft clicks with each step, and he pauses now and then to observe small details. A drop of water trembling on a blade of grass, the sleepy flutter of a butterfly resting on the wind chime string. The garden is not large, but it is carefully arranged. A koi pond rests at its centre, its surface smooth as a mirror. 2 orange fish glide beneath it, stirring only the faintest ripple. Flat stepping stones form a meandering path that leads to a tiny stone shrine tucked beneath a maple. Bamboo sways softly near the fence, and moss carpets the ground like a thick green silence. He kneels beneath the maple tree and closes his eyes. He does not meditate in the formal sense. Instead, he simply breathes, in and out. The scent of pine needles drifts faintly in the warm air, mingled with the aroma of summer herbs, shiso, yuzu, a hint of mint. His wife joins him a few moments later. She moves as quietly as ever, carrying a lacquered tray with 2 small cups of chilled barley tea. The clink of porcelain is delicate, a sound that feels like part of the landscape itself. She sets the tray down, smooths her robes, and sits beside him without a word. Their silence is not empty, but full, like a soft room lit only by sunlight. The tea is cool and grassy, with just the faintest earthy bitterness. They sip it slowly. Sometimes their eyes meet, but there is no need for conversation. This is their time, the gentle space between the demands of morning and the rituals of evening. Occasionally a bird sings, a low warbling note that fades into the heat. The wind chimes stir. A dragonfly skims across the pond, casting a fleeting shadow over the fish. The air is thick but not oppressive, and each breath feels like sinking deeper into a warm bath of quiet. Inside the home, the children nap or play silently with small puzzles carved from wood. One carefully builds a tower of pebbles, balancing each with careful precision. The other copies a flower from the garden onto a scrap of washi paper with charcoal. Their voices are hushed, like whispers to a sleeping house. The samurai shifts slightly, lifting his face to the sky. A cloud moves slowly overhead, stretching like white silk across the pale blue. He recalls a poem he read long ago, something about clouds being the breath of mountains. He almost recites it aloud, but decides instead to let it drift quietly through his thoughts. They remain like this for some time, he and his wife, side by side, sipping tea, watching shadows change. The world slows down around them. Then gently they rise, not all at once, but slowly, like petals unfolding. They walk the garden path, stepping carefully from stone to stone. She stops to examine a patch of moss, brushing away a fallen twig. He adjusts a small lantern that had shifted in the wind. It's not about fixing, it's about tending, about making small things whole. They pause again at the edge of the pond. The koi rise slowly, expecting food. She scatters a few pellets into the water, and the fish gather beneath the surface. Orange, gold, white, like glowing leaves swirling in a hidden current. A breeze picks up. It moves through the bamboo with a sound like whispered paper. The wind chimes sing again, a series of soft metallic tones that fade quickly, leaving behind only stillness. Eventually they return to the Engawa. He sits cross-legged, picking up a small wooden comb to run through his hair. She takes a piece of embroidery from a nearby basket, pale silk partially stitched with the outline of a crane. Her fingers move slowly, steadily, threading the needle again and again through the fabric. In the far distance, the temple bell rings. Not loud, not insistent. Just a reminder that time too is breathing. Afternoon is a time for soft routines, for watching rather than acting, for letting the day unfold without reaching for it. You might hear the faint creak of the floorboards adjusting in the heat, or the distant rattle of wind in the garden gate. You might imagine the touch of sunlight moving slowly across your skin, warm, without urgency. This is not a time for tasks. It is a time for being. Let it settle over you, this moment, this hush. Let your breath slow to match the rhythm of falling leaves. Because in this house, under this sky, peace is not something pursued. It's something tended, grown like a garden, with care, with silence, and with love. You might hear the low murmur of a stream beyond the fence, the soft creak of the house settling into the heat of the day, a distant bell from a temple up the hill. Afternoon is a time for small thoughts, for observing rather than doing, a soft interlude between morning labour and evening rituals. As the sun begins to descend, golden light pours across the garden walls, dappling the moss and flickering like flame along the bamboo fence. The warmth of the day softens into a honeyed glow. You might hear the distant clack of a wooden shutter being drawn, or the low notes of a conch shell blown from a far-off temple, calling all into the embrace of evening. Within the household, a quiet transformation begins. Lanterns, simple paper globes stretched over a wooden frame, are retrieved from storage. Their wicks are trimmed, their oil gently poured, and each one tested with a careful hand. The first lantern is lit as the sun kisses the horizon, and its glow spills gently across the Engawa like a golden hush. Dinner preparations carry a special rhythm. Unlike the hurried meals of modern life, the evening meal is unhurried and complete. The kitchen flickers with the soft glow of flame. Tonight, the samurai's wife prepares grilled river fish brushed with soy and mirin, placed carefully over charcoal. A pot of miso broth simmers on the edge of the hearth, its surface rippling with floating mushrooms and green onions. Thin slices of eggplant are marinated in sweet miso and grilled until their skins blister slightly, and their flesh softens to velvet. Daikon radish is served chilled in a light vinegar dressing, garnished with a single shiso leaf. The children receive a small treat, slices of seasonal fruit, perhaps yuzu or persimmon depending on the time of year. Each dish is plated with intention, arranged to please the eyes as much as the palate. The family gathers around the low table. Cushions are fluffed and placed in a wide circle. The lanterns, now glowing in full, cast soft amber patterns across the tatami mats and sliding doors. Shadows stretch like brushstrokes on canvas. There is no overhead light, only the gentle shimmer of paper lanterns, the flicker of the brazier, and the occasional flick of an incense stick sending fragrant spirals into the ceiling beams. They bow in gratitude before beginning. The children eat slowly, mindful of spills. The parents converse in soft voices, A comment about the breeze, about the ripeness of the persimmons, about the neighbour's pine tree now leaning a little more than before. The samurai, calm and contemplative, nods between bites. He watches the children with fondness. There is a kind of deep joy in this quiet repetition. After the meal, the children bow once more and excuse themselves. They take their lacquered bowls to the side basin, rinse them gently, and begin to unfold the futons. Their sleeping robes, soft cotton dyed in a gentle indigo, are slipped over their shoulders, the scent of sunlight still clinging to the fabric from its drying earlier in the day. The tatami mats are cool beneath their feet. Pillows are fluffed, mosquito nets checked. One child carefully lights a small clay lamp, placing it at the edge of the room just far enough to comfort but not distract. The other smooths the coverlets with small, practiced hands. Back on the veranda, the samurai returns. The brazier glows with a low red heart, its heat gentle and unobtrusive. In his lap rests a cloth-bound book, a collection of Tang Dynasty poetry. He does not read aloud. He traces the characters with his eyes, mouthing the words in silence. Occasionally he pauses to gaze into the shadows. His wife sits nearby with her embroidery, a small hoop taut with fine silk. She stitches slowly, the needle glinting in the lamplight as it passes through the pale crane design. An incense stick smoulders on a dish between them, releasing the scent of aloes wood and cinnamon. Outside, the garden becomes a place of subtle wonders. Fireflies blink lazily above the pond, their light mirrored in the ripples left by a surfacing koi. Bamboo leaves rustle softly, stirred by a breeze barely strong enough to move the Noren curtains. A single cricket sings from beneath the stepping stones, its voice rhythmic and persistent. A nearby temple bell chimes, a soft, deep note that rolls over the hills like a wave. The hour is late, but it does not feel so. Time has slowed. The sky is now deep blue, scattered with stars. One of the children peeks out from behind a sliding screen, then pads over quietly, climbing into the samurai's lap without a word. He places the book aside and wraps an arm around the child's shoulders, holding them gently. They watch the fireflies together, the child's eyes half-lidded with sleep. Eventually the child is carried back to bed. The futons are warm, the lamp lowered. His wife returns to her stitching but doesn't finish the crane. Some things are better completed another day. The samurai stands at the edge of the veranda, gazing up at the moon now fully risen. He breathes deeply, the scent of pine, of warm rice, of paper and wax, all mingling in the night. He extinguishes one lantern, then another, until only a single glow remains. It sits in the alcove near the kamidana, its light flickering against the wooden altar. The evening does not end with finality. It dissolves into sleep, into stillness, into the breath of the night. Now the house is nearly silent. A soft lull settles over every beam and corner. The moon, a pale guardian in the sky, glows faintly above the tiled rooftops. It casts silver ribbons through the wooden slats of the shutters and spills across the garden, where moss glistens like velvet and shadows stretch long and quiet. The koi in the pond barely stir, their glimmering forms suspended beneath the surface like dreams made of water. Inside, the atmosphere has thickened with stillness. The air is cool, touched only by the faintest breeze that flutters through the Noren curtains. The lanterns are now low, casting just enough golden shimmer to make the paper walls glow like pressed sunlight. One by one, the flames are pinched out, not all at once, but slowly, as though the house itself is falling asleep. The children are already curled beneath soft cotton futons, their breathing rhythmic and deep. A single clay lamp glows from the far corner, its light just enough to reveal their peaceful faces. One child hugs a small cloth rabbit. The other mumbles softly in sleep, lost in a dream that probably smells of roasted chestnuts or summer blossoms. The samurai moves with gentle grace. He folds his outer robe, smoothing every crease before placing it on the cedar chest. He checks the shoji screens, sliding them closed with barely a whisper. His fingers trail the edges of the paper as though sealing a chapter shut. You might imagine the faint creak of the tatami beneath his feet, the distant hollow hoot of an owl perched on the gate, the soft, brittle crackle of the brazier's last embers curling into the ash. His wife finishes a final stitch, her embroidery thread gently tugged through the pale fabric one last time. She blows gently on the lantern beside her, dimming it until it gives one last flicker and disappears. In the darkness, their movements are slow and certain, like petals settling after wind. Before lying down, the samurai approaches the kamidana, the small shrine mounted high above the doorway. He bows once, low and long. Then he offers a small pinch of incense. The scent of sandalwood drifts upward, curling toward the rafters like a prayer without words. Outside, fireflies continue their gentle ballet. The sound of the night deepens, a chorus of hidden crickets, a bamboo grove rustling far away, a stream murmuring just beyond the garden walls. Each sound is soft enough to be missed, but together they hum like a lullaby for the earth. The samurai finally lies beside his wife. The futons are warm, the world is hushed. His breath slows, matching the rhythm of the house itself. The moon continues to shine, not brilliant but constant, casting just enough light to make the garden shimmer like a dream remembered. The shadows no longer threaten, they cradle. Let your own breath slow. Let your muscles go heavy. Let your thoughts become feathers. You're part of this house now, part of this night. There is no more to do, nowhere to be. Just this soft, endless silence. Sleep well, traveller.